What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, and this is going to be a 10-rounder in the cruiserweight division, and this fight is going to be Saturday, August 5th from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas, and this fight is going to be broadcasted on DAZN pay-per-view. And to get into both fighters' resumes, Jake Paul, fighting out of the United States, now residing in Puerto Rico, holds a record of 6 wins, 1 loss, with 4 wins coming by way of knockout. He is currently ranked number 207 by BoxRec in the cruiserweight division. He is currently 26 years of age, and he's coming off his one lone defeat when he faced the only pro boxer of his career. He faced Tommy Fury, the brother of Tyson Fury. He lost by split decision, did score a knockdown in the last round of that fight. He put on a much better performance than I expected, but to list some of his best victories, I'm just going to list all his wins, to be honest, and I'll point out some of his better ones. His best win by far is definitely his unanimous decision victory over MMA legend Anderson Silva, where he dropped him and won by a unanimous decision. But obviously Silva was in his late 40s or mid-40s in that fight, so I mean, he was an old man. And Tyron Woodley, also a retired MMA fighter, he beat him by split decision and knockout, brutal knockout. And I believe it was my pick for knockout of the month in December of 2021. It was a really, really highlight reel good knockout for Paul. But, I mean, like I said before, I mean, he's just fighting these retired MMA guys. And he also has a knockout win in the first round over Ben Askren, who's, again, another retired former MMA fighter and wrestler. He also has a knockout win over Nate Robinson, who is a basketball player, and a knockout win over a YouTuber named Enisan Gibb. But to get his opponent's resume, Nate Diaz, many people know him. He's a very familiar face in the fight game, very popular. Obviously, his boxing record is 0-0, but as an MMA fighter, he went 21-13. And in that record, 21 of his wins, he has 5 knockouts in those 21 victories, 12 submission victories, and 4 decision victories. And then in terms of his defeats, he has 2 stoppage losses, 1 submission defeat, and 10 decision defeats, and he is 38 years old. Obviously, currently not ranked by BoxRec since he has no pro boxing matches. But I'm not going to delve into all of his defeats in MMA. I'll just talk about some of the ones that were by stoppage. One of them did come to Jorge Masvidal in 2019 by TKO, and it wasn't really the biggest stoppage. It was a doctor stoppage because of a cut on Diaz's cheek, and it had to be stopped. But before that, I believe he did get dropped in that fight pretty bad. And I remember during the stoppage, Diaz was pretty adamant that he wanted to continue, but the doctor said no because the cut was pretty bad. But I think he should have continued. I mean, it was a cut on the cheek, wasn't a cut on the eye or anything. But his other loss, I'm not really too familiar with this one, but he lost by TKO to Josh Thompson in 2013, just about 10 years ago. And apparently, I think that was as a result of a kick. And then I believe ground and pound that ended that fight, unless I'm incorrect. But that's what I think I read on SureDogMMA.com. I'm doing some research on both these guys. But in terms of some of his best wins in MMA, his most recent win, he defeated Tony Ferguson by submission. Then he defeated Anthony Pettis by unanimous decision, which is another one of his pretty solid wins. Obviously, his most famous win is defeating Conor McGregor by submission in their first fight. He also did lose to Conor McGregor by split decision in their second fight. He has a decision victory over Donald Cowboy Cerrone, a submission victory over Takanori Gomi as well, and a submission victory over Jim Miller. So as you could tell, a lot of his wins are by submission, and as I listed before, more than half of his wins in MMA are from submission. But he himself is known for having some decent hands, and really, in my opinion, this fight could go one of two ways. I think that Jake Paul, I mean, he's obviously been putting a lot of work into this. These past 4 years, he's really been training in boxing, really trying to indulge himself into the sport. And he's definitely improved a lot since he first really started going at it, fighting YouTubers and whatnot. Now he's actually out there making a lot of money, I assume, fighting on these pay-per-view cards, even though they shouldn't be pay-per-view. But, yeah, I mean, he's Obviously, I know he's fighting these retired MMA guys, and he lost his first fight against a pro boxer, and not really a good pro boxer in Tommy Fury. But, I mean, he's definitely making a name for himself in these few years, putting himself out there. And, yeah, obviously he's not that high level, Jake Paul, but, I mean, he's definitely very good for someone who's been only fighting for 4 years, I would say, about 4.5 years. But for Nate Diaz, like I mentioned before, he's much, much older than Jake Paul, about 12 years older. And like I said, I mean, he's more of a jiu-jitsu guy, but he's also got some good hands. And I know that, like I said before, he has a lot of wins by submission, but also he's known for like his taunting on the feet, slapping guys in the face, flipping them the middle finger. I mean, he's known for his antics in this one, and it's going to be sad to see him with full boxing gloves on, so he won't be able to do that to Jake Paul and slap him around and have fun with him like that. But I think that he'll still be taunting Paul in this one, and I think that despite not really, like in the press conferences and whatnot, he doesn't really look too like focused into it. Looks like he's just going in there, but I think he's going to be pretty focused, and I know he's been training pretty hard. I mean, throughout his career, I know that he's been training with a lot of pro boxers. I know that before even all this talk about these two fighting, I knew that Nate Diaz was training with guys like Hilisto Madera, who's a super middleweight Mexican contender. I know he's been sparring with other guys like that around that level. So he's definitely been around the game. He's definitely has sparred a lot of boxing, I would say, in his entire career. And I did see some footage of him sparring WBC super lightweight champion Regis Prograis, and it didn't look that bad. He was throwing hands with Prograis, but Prograis fights at 140. Jake Paul is 185 pounds. And during Nate Diaz's career, he went 155 and 170, respectively. But also, I saw Nate Diaz sparring with Esquiva Falcao, who is a former world title challenger in the middleweight division. Falcao did just lose for the world title against Vincenzo Gualtieri, but he's still a pretty high-level fighter, and is definitely a better fighter than Jake Paul. And he was actually roughing up Falcao a bit in the video. They were kind of going at it, but Falcao did say that his trainer told him to go easy on him because he was dead tired. That could be a lie, because I mean, he could just be saying that just because that video went out and he was getting hit pretty bad, but who knows? It could be true, could not be true. But throughout Nate Diaz's career, he's known for having some pretty good cardio, and I think that in this fight it's going to follow through, and this is actually Jake Paul's first 10-round fight. And just to delve into how I see this fight going round by round, I think the earlier rounds are going to be predominantly won by Jake Paul. I think throughout this fight, Nate Diaz is going to be the one coming forward. He's going to be the one dictating the pace in terms of setting up the offense and just being the one going forward. I think Jake Paul is going to be looking for that big counter overhand right that he's used to throwing. And I think he's definitely going to be catching Nate Diaz a lot in this one. But I think that Diaz, he has a very, very good chin, very strong chin. Notoriously throughout his career, he's taken a lot of heavy blows. And I think that he will be able to take Jake Paul's punches. And I think that the first 3 rounds could be, I think that Jake Paul will be ahead. I think he'll probably be ahead 29-28, something like that. I think that maybe Nate Diaz might take like the first round just as a feel out, as he might be the one doing a bit more just going forward. Yeah, I think he might edge the first round, but then I think rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be pretty clear rounds for Jake Paul. I think he'll just edge them by countering on the outside, landing the better shots. And I think this fight could go one of 2 ways, and both these ways I think that Jake Paul will win. I either see Jake Paul catching Nate Diaz in the middle rounds with a decent shot and then just following up with big combinations, and then I think the referee might make like a controversial stoppage, might stop Diaz standing if he's hurt. I feel like that could happen, but my gut is telling me that Diaz will go the distance with Paul. But I think after the first 5 rounds, I think that Jake Paul will probably be up 49-46, something like that, like 4 rounds to 1, just by boxing on the outside a bit, countering Nate Diaz. But I think in the second half of this fight, Diaz is going to really start to rough up Jake Paul a little bit. I think that Jake Paul will have a much tougher time in the second half than the first half. And I think that Diaz will be going forward. His shots will start to land a bit more. And I think that it will be a pretty grueling fight for Jake Paul. I know that he had a pretty close fight with Tyron Woodley the first time. Got rocked in that one. Had a pretty tough fight with Tommy Fury and Anderson Silva. But I think this one's going to be different because Diaz is going to be in his face, pressuring him, throwing combinations. And I know Diaz, it doesn't really look like he has a lot of snap on his punches, since it kind of looks like he's throwing with his hand or throwing with his arms a bit. But I think his shots will definitely be there on Jake Paul, roughing him up. And I think that Jake Paul could just edge maybe round 6 and 7, but I think those rounds will start to get a bit closer. They'll be a bit more competitive. Diaz might be able to edge one of them. And then I think rounds 8, 9, and 10 are going to be really, really good rounds for Diaz. I don't think he might take all of them. He might take 2 out of the 3 rounds there. But I think that like rounds 9 and 10, Diaz will win. I think that he'll just be the one going forward, doing more, being a bit more active. And I think that if this fight does go the full 10, I think we will see Nate Diaz, after the final bell, doing his trademark double bicep, going back to his corner. But, I mean, he's really a fun guy. A lot of people do enjoy him. And from my time of watching combat sports, he's definitely a good face in sport, and he's very, very funny to watch, especially with his antics. But I think that he will win the later rounds in this one, specifically rounds 9 and 10. Round 8 will be a bit closer, but I think Jake Paul will take a lot of shots in rounds 9 and 10. I mean, maybe the 10th round could be different because Jake Paul, when he fought Anderson Silva, Silva was the one supposed to be sort of jumping on the gas pedal a bit because he was down in the fight, and then Jake Paul scored a late knockdown. So who knows? He might just try and give everything he has in the 10th and final round here. But who knows? Maybe Nate Diaz might be able to take the 8th. Paul might be able to take the 10th. I mean, who knows? But I think the later rounds, Diaz should take 2 out of the 3 in the last 3 rounds. But in the end, I think Diaz might be able to win 3 rounds. Anywhere from 2 rounds to 4 rounds, I think Diaz will win, and I think that's really going to be it. I don't think that Diaz will win more than 4 rounds, but who knows? He could get stopped in this one. I could definitely see him getting stopped, but I think if he makes it through those middle rounds, I think Jake Paul is going to be in a world of trouble in those later rounds. I don't think he's going to lose, but I think he's going to be hit a lot, especially to the body, to the head, getting pressed, and it's going to be pretty tough to battle it through in those later rounds, but I think in the end, Paul's going to get the decision victory, and I think that the judges will turn out scorecards somewhere between 98-92, 97-93, I think somewhere around there. But I think one judge could have a 96-94, but I think it will most likely be somewhere between there, like a 96-94, 97-93, or 98-92, all in favor of Jake Paul to get his 7th victory and to get back into the winning ways. So overall, I believe that Jake Paul will defeat Nate Diaz by unanimous decision to get his 7th victory. And if you are also going to watch this fight, or if you got this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys go comment, leave a like, check out some of my other predictions and fight reviews, and hit the subscribe button as well. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.